Hi there, this is Curtis Dieter. Like all of you, I am many things. A husband, a father, and a son. I'm a hard worker and a dreamer, a writer and a publisher, but underneath everything, I am made of rust and glass. You are listening to Proud to Be of Rust and Glass, a podcast series of conversations surrounding the creative journey and all the good and ill associated with making great art in the Midwest. It is the human side of colors brushed onto canvas, of words scribbled between covers, of sweat and grit bled into telling our stories. Real stories about real people doing what we love best, making great art. Welcome to today's episode of Proud to Be of Rust and Glass, where I have the pleasure of speaking with Jonie McIntire. Jonie is Lucas County's first ever female poet laureate and one of Northwest Ohio's hardest working poets. And if you ask me, she's a darn good poetry editor too. Jonie, it's so great to have you. Thanks for taking the time to talk today.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I think the first time I met you was actually at a workshop in Point Place for Ode to the Zip Code, which is a yearly contest that Fair Housing Center puts on.
That's right.
That was, I think, 5 years ago, maybe?
Yes, in BC before COVID.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure how I even found my way there, to be honest with you, but I was there.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a poet, but you were able to inspire me to submit to a poetry contest, the first one and only one I've ever submitted to.
Yeah.
And we've both really come a long way since then, haven't we?
One of the other participants in that writing workshop was one of the winners that year.
Okay.
So writing
you sort of
workshops
have that feather,
work.
You have that feather in your hat.
That's right. That's right.
You had to have some part in that. I know. We were all sort of lost at the beginning, and you were able to help us all walk through all that stuff. So Ode to the Zip Code, for those that don't know, is a contest that the Fair Housing Center does every year. And you create a 5-line poem with each line having the number of words that are in your zip code.
Right.
So mine is Maumee 43537.
Oh, nice.
So I write a lot about the Maumee River and the Village Idiot and things like that, because that's what comes to mind. I've lived in Maumee for a short amount of time, but some of the things these poets and young poets too come up with for their zip codes are incredible. Yeah.
There's real power to giving words to the places that we live. So much of our identity is built around where we've grown up. The beauty of those Ode to the Zip Codes is that they can be so quick. It gives you all of the thoughtfulness of poetry, thinking about words, being very precise, but also talking about your neighborhood and who you are in it. And actually, next year, I'm hoping to do a larger project that gets into more poetry about place, and ultimately, hopefully, involves some poetry tours in different neighborhoods. So
I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
It really forces you to stop and think critically about where you live and see it sort of through a different lens than maybe you would on a day-to-day basis, doesn't it? While I mainly want to focus on the poetry work you do in the community, I want to also learn a little bit more about you as a poet. How did poetry find you?
I have a literary sort of family. My mother has always been a writer. She did short story writing mostly. She got undergraduate fine arts degree from Bowling Green, and actually she went back to college when I went to college. So, but and my dad always read to us. Like, we just always had books. It's weird to me to walk into a house that doesn't have books, even in a digital age. Feels strange. It feels somehow a little cold or something. So I grew up with books around all the time. I think one of my first memories that I thought poetry is something special was my dad reading Alice in Wonderland to me. And, you get to the Jabberwocky and you get to some of these different portions where, like in the Jabberwocky, there are non-words. How incredible. How incredible to write a story that's made up of words that are not words, but you can understand it. So, that's what I love about poetry, is how language is capacitive. It can involve everything, and we can convey so much in the sounds of and the specificity of, and then also sort of the non-specificity. I can say red, but that could mean, to read words on a page, or it could be a color, or it could be the way that language can go in different directions, and we can use that to express anything. I think that's gorgeous. I think it's wonderful. So that was it. I was kind of hooked with the play that you can have with words.
Oh, yeah. And then the complexity of the English language, and then the simplicity of it at the same time.
Right.
And it's just, it's one of those things that's, it's endless, it's bountiful, it's so much fun to play with.
Yeah.
How have you sort of changed as a person as you've evolved as a poet?
Because I'm still growing up,
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? Right.
Hopefully not too fast.
Not
either.
sure what I'm going to do when I'm a grown up. I think that I feel like I'm in high school as a writer.
Okay.
I've learned my basics and stuff like that, but I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to find out how to not wait until the last minute. How
Easier
not,
said than done.
Yeah, right. Like how not to try to rush toward things, how to pace myself better. I love the creativity, but I'm terrible at the practice. So that's something that I need to work on. And the other challenge that I find is that writers aren't just writers, right? You can inhabit these different roles. So, you have some slightly different roles that you have. You write, but then you also do these other leadership kinds of roles, setting up things like this, platforms for people to talk about arts. That takes some space as well. So one thing that I find for myself, and I don't know if you find this too, but I really enjoy that. I really enjoy hosting things, and I love to see other people writing and getting their work out there and growing, and it's so exciting. And maybe it challenges me a little less than writing my own stuff and focusing hard. And
I feel that 100%. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So I find myself filling my day up with, here's this other project and here's this other event, and I want all of those things. Mm-hmm. And then I go, I haven't sent anything out. I haven't, the work of a writer, the writing part, the editing part, the kind of just slog through.
Right.
I haven't done those. And so that's the other thing that I constantly need to kind of keep myself in check and go, are you just filling up your day because it's easy reward,
Right.
Events are like cookies. I could eat them all day.
Oh, yeah.
It's great, but I need to, like, every once in a while get back to try to write a poem a day, or have a regular practice.
Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out how to fit all of those things in and where to say no, what to say no to,
hard.
Becomes sort of a project on its own, doesn't
it does.
it? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something you said you're a high schooler as a writer. I'm probably a kindergartner at saying no and fitting things in where I need to fit them in at this point.
Yeah.
But let's sort of shift over to a lot of the great work you're doing in the poetry community. Why do you think it's so important for a community, a middle-sized city like Toledo, a Rust Belt city, quote unquote, to have a strong and thriving art scene?
Well, I think it goes back to the identity thing, right? So that whole concept of poems about place, but it's not just poems. I mean, any kind of artwork is an expression of ourselves, or an expression of our sense of identity and how we fit into the rest of the world. Rust Belt cities, Midwest cities are ultimately a collaborative effort.
Absolutely.
I mean, we are very fortunate in Toledo to have some of the businesses here that we do have, but we all know in the Rust Belt, businesses come and go, and the people who are left behind need to be able to support each other in the ways that we need to survive. So I think that a big part of arts in Midwest towns really involves that sense of collaboration. And not only collaboration, but a sense that anyone can be a leader in that community. If you want something, and you know this as well, but I think a lot of people know it, and I want people to know, if you want something, if you don't see something happening in Toledo, make it. You can start it. I mean, that's what I love about this area. I moved from San Francisco to here, And what I found there was I couldn't even get into a poetry read. Like, it was too intimidating. They were already
Right.
set. They already had all the people, and they were way out of my league. It was too much. It's hard to grow in that environment. I had to take classes there to grow because I didn't have access to the people otherwise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and to maybe prove yourself to some of the voices there, and to show them that you're serious. And here is great. I mean, I went from 2018, I had maybe one writer friend in the area. I had a couple people who vaguely knew me from getting my bachelor's in creative writing at the University of Toledo, but I sort of slacked off. I was working full time. I wasn't really serious at that time.
Well, I mean, that's life. That's not slacking off.
Yeah, exactly. And now I look 2023, I know 800 maybe artists and writers in the Midwest, and they know who I am, and it's crazy because somebody like me was able to do that, which means somebody like you or somebody like whoever's listening now can basically do whatever they want.
Yeah, you can build it, and that's what's gorgeous about this place. I think the other thing, and what you just said is really important, those 800 people were right next to you the whole time. So here's the other thing that's really wonderful about arts in our area. It's extremely rare to find someone who's just an artist,
right,
and makes money at it, and that's their full-time job. Right. That's rare. Now, I would love for that to be an option for more people. And the Ohio Arts Council, the Arts Commission of Greater Toledo, where they have grants, I encourage people to go for it, okay? You're not going to lose anything by trying. So go for the grants so that you can do these projects. But people around you who are union workers, who are, wait staff, who are garbage collectors, any kind of thing, stay-at-home parents, at every level, there are artists. They might not call themselves that, but they care about something, they focus on it, they work on it, and it excites them to their core. That's art. So it's all around us. We just need to find these ways of reaching out and letting ourselves explore that side of who we are and see that in each other.
Absolutely. I think you touched on something really important, too, about a lot of, especially in the Toledo area, I've seen it a lot in other Midwest cities that we sort of have ties with now, where we're all doing so many different things, where a lot of us are moving different pieces of our lives out of the way so that we can do our passion, so that we can make our art. And there are times when it gets very difficult. Life gets complicated, as we all know. Do you have any experience or any advice for anyone who has maybe found themselves in maybe a difficult place in life, has sort of lost sight of their art? Has that ever happened to you, and how have you gotten back on track?
Yeah. Nothing will take your hobbies away from you like kids.
We love our kids, but it's very true.
It's a wonderful trade-off, but it does change your timeline and change your focus a little bit, and rightly so. I think the biggest and most important thing is patience with yourself. I think we get in our heads that we have to be perfect at things. Sometimes what we consume, either through media or just in a general sense, we consume these things that are polished, perfect little packets of artistry and stuff. Whatever. Somebody has a TikTok and it's the perfect little thing, and you go, there were like 10 hours of editing and practicing and to get this tiny clip. And we don't know that when we watch it.
Right.
We just watch it and think everybody else does these amazing things, and they don't. They work really hard, and they get to a point, and then they edit it down to this,
It's like an iceberg, right?
It's like an iceberg. There's so much there, and you just see this little tip. But it's important to not worry about the end result, just to start. Just anything. I used to work in a corporate office, and I had kids, and there was no time left. There was no focus left. Art does take focus and kind of getting out of your own head a little bit. I mean, it's funny. You have to crawl into your own head to think the things, but you have to get out of your head to see what you want to write about, But if you set tiny goals, if you're like, I'm just going to get a journal and I'm going to write. I'm going to fill 2 pages. and I'm just going to fill it. And it's not just going to be, lists of things I need to do, which actually is, most of my books are a list of things I need to do. But something I saw today, taking that moment to just see outside of yourself can lead to little turning points. I think the other thing, and this is really important, is to keep reading. You don't have to read all the time. It comes in waves for me. I have attention span sometimes, and other times I have no attention span. But keep reading. Doesn't have to be huge things. This is why I like poetry. It's nice little packets. You can read one or two things and just think about it.
You can read it on the go. You can read it in between things.
There's apps, there's all kinds of opportunities. Go to the library, get a random book of poetry out. You don't have to like it, and just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's better than you are. Here's the other thing. It's not just dead guys who rhyme. It can be all kinds of things. Poetry really comes to us through the radio. It comes through podcasts. It comes through all different kinds of media. So, you have to kind of let yourself have an open ear to things. But it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be just a little bit every day to have that sense of self. And that's what it really comes back to is, art also gives us a sense of identity. When I was working and when I had the kids, it was really hard to feel like I had any edge that was my own. It was, I'm an extension of these children. Right. I'm an extension of this workplace. That's what I do all day long.
And I think it's really important even for non-artists to find that space for yourself
too,
so that you can still feel like your own human being from time to time.
Right. It is a room of one's own. Even if it's not a physical thing, it has to be an emotional thing. You have to have some space that's like yours.
Yeah, I think that's vitally important for our own sanity, for our own self-identity. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, as poet laureate, you're doing all kinds of stuff to bolster and improve the vitality of the Lucas County poetry scene. What sort of big picture ideas, plans do you have for Lucas County?
Well, I will tell you, I think that I find that things grow best when you have many small things, okay? So I'm a little tricky about my plans in the sense that, first of all, I want Toledo area, the Lucas County area, to get small pieces of attention over time. Right? So, we're going to have Ohio Poetry Association involvement a little bit more
Fantastic.
In the area.
They do great work.
Yes. We're going to have a continuation of some writing workshops, the Writers Workshop series that have been going on through the Toledo Lucas County Public Library. That will continue. And I'd like to actually expand that in the next couple of years. I think that's a program that we can send into schools and we can send into some different areas so everybody has access to some writing workshops. And, continuing to talk about poems about place. And so there are some projects specifically around that, but we can work on that later. Another thing that I think is really, really, really important is to support the structures we already have. You don't have to build everything new every time. Right. Here's the other thing that you learn over time, right? You don't have to build everything, and you don't have to build it yourself. Continuing the spirit of collaboration that really the Lucas County area is built on, and doing some different kind of ekphrastic being anytime that you do writing about another kind of artwork, right? You look at a painting and you write something about it, or you write a story that's sort of based on it. But you can do that with music. I mean, ekphrastic is any kind of artwork that comes from another kind of artwork.
Sounds like a very active way to support other arts in Lucas County.
Yes, we can all engage the arts in these ways. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do, and then just continuing to bring other poets to Toledo. Quietly, I want it to become a destination. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily with a big bang that's like a one-time show, because then that's a memory later.
As you said, we have plenty of foundation, plenty of other draws in the area to make that a reality.
Right,
I love that idea.
And even some of our locations, I really want to have support the Collingwood Arts Center in a more consistent way. I think we have these institutions and we forget them a little bit, and they kind of take this back seat, and they don't need to.
Right.
We do have a lively arts scene. We kind of talk proudly about ourselves, but not always get to the specifics. Here's where you need to be. Here, everybody show up. We show up for each other, but it takes a minute sometimes. So,
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, rumor has it you might have some poetry to share with us today.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I will read you a love poem, okay? But let's keep in mind, I have this funny little habit. Whenever I write love poems, there's always a dead body in it. I'm not sure why that is, but anyway. So this one is called The Devil Loves Arithmetic, and it's actually the first poem in my chapbook called Semi-Domesticated, which is out through Sheila Nagig Editions. Awesome. The devil loves arithmetic. My love, you should know that I have already calculated the life insurance if you died. The partial disability, your school loan dissolved, the extra closet space and shoes near the door, an extra hook for coats. But before you bristle, know this. It has nothing to do with socks perpetually scattered on the floor or the water glass forever dirty and in the sink. It's just the math of it all, the ease with which lives translate to numbers and numbers fit so tidy in boxes, and spreadsheets make stacking boxes easy. Watching early morning news, another bombing in a foreign land where bodies that aren't ours aren't counted, followed by a school levy translated to costs per child and call in to talk. Do you think it's worth paying more? I can hear you rising from bed to bath and slow downstairs, and I can't help myself. 6, 7, Board Creek 8, maybe 23 more until you reach me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
I could talk about the art scene in the Midwest and poetry and writing with you all day.
Yeah.
But I guess the last question I have for you is where can people find more about what you're doing? Where can people check out your work and see the amazing poetry improvements that you're bringing to Lucas County?
All right. Well, I think the best places to go are ToledoPoet.com. It's a website where we try to pull together all of the poetry events that are going on in the area, contests, things like that. It's just a couple of volunteers, so if you don't see it on there, let us know and we can add it, okay? And then I do have a website. It's JonieMcIntire.net, and I would love to be, again, better at the practice of things and constantly posting things on there, but I update it every once in a while, and those are probably the two main places. That's where I go to kind of let people know. On Facebook, there is a thing called Toledo Poetry Museum, and that's another one where when we see events, we kind of repost onto that one. I run a reading series called Uncloistered Poetry, and that also has a presence on Facebook. And so, we have a live event every month and an online event every month. And so you can follow that on Facebook and ToledoPoet.com.
I love it. Yeah. I love to hear it. The last thing is, do you have any sort of sage words of advice for new poets? I don't want to say young poets, but anybody who's finding themselves now in poetry?
I would say read everything. Don't be afraid to read stuff that you normally wouldn't. Read everything. Read often. Try to write everything. And just don't be afraid. Go to a reading. Go see what other people are doing. There are real people around you who are just like you.
Sometimes
5 minutes later.
That, yeah. So I think the don't be afraid is perfect advice to sort of end today. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I really appreciate this. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Great. Thank you.
Anytime I feel like I want to complain about how busy I am, Jonie McIntire comes to mind. I see maybe about half of what she does, and it makes my head spin trying to keep up with all the work she's doing to promote and foster a thriving poetic community right here in Northwest Ohio. If you're even loosely connected to that community, I'm sure you've crossed paths with her at one time or another. This has been today's episode of Proud to Be of Rust and Glass. I am your host and producer, Curtis Dieter. Our executive producer is Chris Pfeiffer. If you want to join the conversation, check us out at wgte.org/of Rust and Glass. Until next time, thanks for listening. Now go forth and create.
WGTE. Voices around us.
WGTE is supported in part by American Rescue Plan Act funds allocated by the City of Toledo and the Lucas County Commissioners and administered by the Arts Commission.